talk about can AI rewild us. I have been working for HireVue for almost a decade and doing data science and AI to help with hiring. And this is being used in a lot of ways in HR, as many of you know. But there's a lot of interesting work going on here of how we can use AI to help standardize the hiring process, help automate a lot of pieces of it that are broken or biased. And so that's been a large part of my work, is to focus on proving out the science and addressing concerns people have around this technology, and really publishing in peer-reviewed journals, making sure we don't have we have systems that are less biased than humans, and a lot more efficient as well. And you've heard it in a couple of places today or yesterday probably. The skills are the new talent currency. So everyone in this field is talking about skills, how we should hire based on skills. Super important, because we have a lot of new jobs coming and they're not jobs we've ever seen before. So how do you know who to hire? You can't just look at their resume and hire someone who's done that job before. You have to really know what they can do and what they're capable of. And so that's a big part of my day-to-day and the conversation around skills, how skills are changing, what skills do we need in the age of AI. But today I kind of want to zoom out and talk more about what work is to us and how we think about work going forward. So for us, a lot of times we talk about work and life as these two separate things, right? Like we have our life that happens when we're not working. And I have 2 young children. This is very true for me, that I cannot work with them around, right? Those are 2 separate worlds completely. So we define work as time spent on tasks completed in exchange for money, and they generate economic value. Life is what happens when you're not working. So a lot of people work to live, and the way that actually, for the bulk of our history of human evolution, work is life, right? The way that people have seen it for ages is that those things are the same thing. So I'll talk a little louder if I need to. I know, it's so hard. I'll just get closer to the, yeah. Yeah, it's quite echoey. So for a lot of human history, work was something that contributed to the survival of the group. It was integrated with play and rest and social connection. It was, life was happening while you're working, right? You were around your tribe. People were helping you with your kids. You were, building something together, and you were living to work, not just working to live. So I want to zoom into this kind of idea about how humans have lived. We're animals. We think about how we have lived for over 99% of our existence, and how different that is from how we live now. So people have always lived, I say have always, up until the very recent past, have always lived in these tribes of 20 to 50 people. It's an extended family, people you know really well. I think being around new people wouldn't be super common, so we have this kind of social anxiety that we experience regularly. They didn't experience as much. They were around people they trusted and knew. And we were talking earlier about maybe didn't even like all of them, but they were your family either way. You had no choice. I think it's an interesting idea that we talk about community so much and creating community. To these people, that would be like trying to explain to a fish what water is. Like it's just life. That's how life works. It's a given. They're quite egalitarian, and they're really focused on immediate needs. It's really hard for us to imagine that, right? We know that we don't know exactly how hunter-gatherers lived, and there was differences in tribes, but people were nomadic, and they didn't have agriculture. They didn't have a way to store food for very long. So we know that they were really focused on what was going on today, maybe a couple days in the future, but they didn't have, they didn't have the weight of 10, 20, 40, 50 years in the future, what's happening in their life or what was happening in the world. They were focused on today. There's a lot of evidence that they worked only a few hours a day to get the food they needed for today. And again, it's hard to define what work even means in this scenario, because it was very integrated into life. They had a varied whole food diet. They had a lot more gut bacteria than us, and they had a lot of physical activity, a lot of sunshine. So, and it continues. People were doing activities that were deeply related to their survival and human connection. We're deeply social animals. So this matters a lot to us. It is, it's what we live for, is to be around other people and connect with other people. And they had minimal ownership. You didn't have ownership of anything if you're nomadic and you're not staying in one place. Communal parenting, this is super interesting to me. I think in a lot of tribes, there's actually paternal uncertainty is a little bit of a bonus, because you might not know whose father, which child belongs to which father, and it doesn't matter because it's truly being raised by a village. Kids are being raised by a tribe, and everyone kind of pitching in to help with that. I don't mean to make it sound like, everything was a utopia back then. We know their life was hard still, and there were conflicts. So when we think of conflicts, they're nothing like the conflicts that we have today, right? Where we have large-scale warfare. A lot of times disputes were resolved through moving, because there just wasn't that many people, and there was enough space for all those people and enough resources. So you leave, you go somewhere else, you find a new place, you get away from any possible conflict. And death is a natural part of life. I mean, one thing that I think is absolutely worse about this time, right, is like women died in childbirth all the time, children died all the time. We know that was the leading cause of death for women, or maybe for anyone besides old age. And so that was a hard thing that people had to endure, and they had to come face to face with it a lot more than we do. And so they had a little more acceptance of it, I think. Low chronic stress and anxiety. I mentioned Living for Today. I think there's this great book by Robert Sapolsky, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it talks about what is stress designed for. Stress is designed to be acute and in the moment make you take action and get out of a situation. So you think of a zebra getting chased by a lion. It happens, and then after that is over, the zebra either gets killed or it got away, and it calms down again. But we live in a state of chronic stress where our lions are our kids' college fund, or our reputation, our ego, our career, retirement, whatever it may be. These things are piling on years and years in the future, and it's a huge, huge weight. So that chronic stress has a lot of effects on our bodies. It has a lot of mental health effects, physical effects, and really, hurts us a lot. So about 10 or 12,000 years ago, agriculture came, and with all the kind of benefits of it, there's a lot of a good argument that this was pretty bad for people. We settled down and stopped moving. We were able to till the land, grow crops, have like consistent sources of food, but it means we had the ability to have more children and grow populations to a size that was, it's just a different scale of living and a different way of living with that many children in a family. The tribe became the nuclear family, which is really detrimental, and women became property. And so also our diets changed a lot, and this was a huge effect of agriculture. Before, we were eating a lot of like nutrient-rich foods, and we went to eating a lot of calorie-rich foods, like animal products and bread. And so that's had a lot of, this continues today where it's like sugar, gets worse and worse. Our gut bacteria, our health really suffers because of diet. I mentioned I have 2 little kids, so this is a big area for me. Going to the nuclear family is really rough on parents, right? And I'm from Utah, where people sometimes have 5, 6, 7 kids, and it's like, as a parent, sometimes you feel like you're failing because it's so hard. But really, it would never happen that you'd be parenting alone. Sorry, did that mean 3 minutes? I had 30-minute spot. 3 o'clock? Okay. Oh, they told me 30. Okay, I'll go faster. I was told 30. And then in recent history, we started using screens, which obviously just made this even worse. We're sitting a lot. It's really bad for our mental health. It's really bad for kids and teens. So kind of coming into our current day, we see these huge shifts in innovation, and there's things like the printing press and antibiotics that were a huge deal. And this moment in AI is probably one of those moments, and we can expect to have a lot of those moments and see more and more of that happening throughout our lifetimes, but in very unexpected ways. So I think that's good to remember as we try to predict what's going to happen. We thought we'd have flying cars by now, and we don't. We have the internet, which what people didn't know why that would even be important. Like, you can send messages to your friends, who cares, right? So it's hard to predict what that curve will look like. But humans have always done a pretty good job at continuing to create work for ourselves and create jobs. So I'm going to skip through some of this stuff because I really do just have 15. Okay. I planned for 30. This is from the World Economic Forum. Over the next 5 years, they're predicting 170 million new jobs will be created, 92 million displaced, so a net new of 78 million jobs. And a lot of these jobs are things we don't yet understand, and we don't know what they are yet. And so having the skills to fill those roles and understanding what people can do is super important. And even in jobs that aren't changing, almost 40% of the skills needed for that job are going to change in the next 5 years. And employers are really scrambling. They don't know how to deal with this. They don't know how to understand the skills they currently have, how those are going to translate, how do they hire for what they need. And the same World Economic Forum report says these are the top 10 fastest growing skills in the next 5 years. And you'll see, like, the top few are not very surprising: AI, networks, technology stuff. But then you have this middle section that's like really human, right? And flexibility, curiosity, things like this. And a lot of the bottom is also requires a lot of human elements. But I think what's important about this is that this is going to change before it's it's written down, basically. So how do we think about what humans can do as we go forward when this is constantly changing? That's really hard to predict, and I think that's the question I get a lot, is like, how do I future-proof my resume? And the truth is, when people say they know, often they're thinking a lot more short term. And we don't know. There's this idea from Ethan Mollick of the jagged frontier of AI. It keeps expanding, but the edge of it is wavy. So there's weird things that AI can do really well, but something that seems just as hard, it's not as good at. And so we're kind of struggling to figure out where this frontier is and how we work with AI. I'll skip over that. This is a couple years old, but it's interesting. They had a study of customer support agents using AI to support them in helping people answer questions. And they saw a productivity increase, which is not super surprising. But I thought one thing that's interesting is that it disproportionately helped the lower performers in the group. And for the higher performers, it helped them move a little faster, but it actually hurt their accuracy a little. So the way that AI helps us is really context specific, and it's often good to think about, well, people that are really good at this job, like, is this helping them or hurting them? What are we losing by gaining this efficiency? And I showed that list earlier of, like, hey, humans are still needed. We have this narrative right now. Humans are still needed for all these things like empathy and creativity. But in just the last year, the use of ChatGPT and others for emotional use, and we've seen apps here, it's exploding. This is a really great way to get help or therapy, and people are trusting these systems and bonding with them emotionally. So it just shows kind of how quickly that's changing. I'll skip that too. Okay, so thinking about where we're going, I also took this from Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, which is a good book, and he has these future scenarios, and I think, Nicole said it yesterday, we've done the utopia, we've done the dystopia, we're all familiar with this idea, hey, maybe AI is just going to automate everything and we can do poetry all day. That would be awesome, right? I don't know if humans would work that way, but then there's the dystopia. What if AI does everything and then there's nothing for us to do? And there's mass inequality. We have, people are starving. There's another scenario of this gridlock when institutions and regulations can't keep up with the technology, and we have some kind of bureaucratic collapse. And the case he's arguing for in the book is, hey, the best way forward is to have symbiosis. Nicole showed that plot yesterday about what humans do, what AI does, and then maybe there's this whole other area potentially that only humans and AI can do together. How do we find that and enhance each other's strengths? Lastly, he talks about techno-stagnation, which I actually personally think this is a real possibility as well. Like maybe we're assuming this thing keeps going, we're gonna have flying cars someday, and really it becomes another tool in our toolbox, and the change is not as big as we might expect. But we need meaning. I love this. This is from a friend of mine, Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic, and he's an IO psychologist and an author. It's a little bit of a funny blog post where he goes through history and says, you know, humans need meaning, but what is meaning? That's changed culturally. So when in this hunter-gatherer days, we are one with the gods. We're part of this earth, and then you move into, you know, strong religious structures where my purpose is God's plan. And then you move into, I think, therefore I am, and this kind of humanism. And then we have this industrial revolution. We have a big focus on work. Like, to work is to live. That kind of falls into what is there to life? Life is meaningless. You have to make your own meaning. Into a consumer stage where he says, I shop, therefore I am. A very individualistic well-being portion of find your own truth, and then he jokes, you know, currently we're in the I prompt, therefore I am stage of meaning. But meaning is a big issue, and it's really hard to define. So actually about 25% of people feel like their job is definitely or probably socially useless. And it's really interesting to look at this plot, because a lot of the jobs where people feel like they're making a difference and they're meaningful, we don't pay very well. And so, yeah, as animals, we are very incentivized to go to the right here because we need security. We want to be able to rest someday, and all these things that our ancestors really didn't have to worry about. So it's pretty backwards. We have companies that try to be our tribe, right? They're telling us we're family. We bring your whole self to work, and you have these benefits. We care about your wellness. We care about your time off. But ultimately, that falls flat in a lot of cases because it is a transactional relationship, right? Your family isn't going to disown you because, like, the market's not great. And so a lot of times this is not, you know, it's the language of rituals and tribe, but the relationship is not there. So we need that, and we're not getting it necessarily from our work lives. So I don't have all the answers, but I have some thoughts and tips about the topic. I love this book called Civilized to Death by Christopher Ryan. It's a little dark, but but what he talks about that really stuck with me is, he said, I've traveled to many countries. I've been in third world countries where you go to a zoo and it's just like horrible. I mean, you can tell the animals are not in good shape. This is a terrible, terrible situation to live in. And animals aren't supposed to live in zoos, but there are better zoos. There are zoos that are closer to what a tiger would live like in the wild, and the tiger is better for it. And you can see by looking at them that they're healthier and happier. So the argument is that we've built ourselves a zoo, and it's kind of a shitty zoo. We are sitting and looking at screens all day. We're not getting enough social connection. So how do we build ourselves a better zoo? And I think that hopefully AI offers us a little bit of a shift in how we think about work. And so on a personal level, and these are so obvious, I almost don't need to say them, I think of the 5 S's. What do we need to do? We all know like these things, but we don't always do them. Get exercise, eat good food, get sunlight, share your attention and help with no agenda, connect with people socially, and slow down. This is a big one. We think about a lot of times about work as stuff that earns money, tasks that check something off the list. What do we do when we're just connecting with our kids, or it's kind of this unmeasurable stuff that actually creates value, and thinking of that as valuable. I have some thoughts on the societal level, and I invite you to think about as well, is kind of how can you bring this into your life, and how can we bring this into our workplaces? So how do we focus on well-being and meaning instead of just the bottom line and efficiency? How do we sit less? I mean, in different interfaces, can I manage a team of agents while I'm on a hike instead of sitting at my desk? Normalizing doing meetings while you're on a walk. Making virtual spaces that feel real. I have a physicist friend that told me the other day, I like going to the office when you're when you're yelling at someone at a chalkboard, it's collaborating, but if you do it over Zoom, it's just sad. So you want to be in person. It's very different, right? So at every decision point, are we getting closer to or further away from how we evolved? So far, we've been getting very far away. How do we try to make these little decisions to get back? So I'll end with a question that ChatGPT helped me write. If we can teach machines to be more human, can we let humans be more human too?